Don in London, hello. It's January 25th, 2013, 8:30 in the morning. My video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My substance of addiction was alcohol, still is, because I'm in recovery one day at a time. But I could be addicted to other things, trying to be perfect, with the perfect people, in the perfect places, doing the perfect things, and having the perfect things. So emulating and trying to be something, never quite getting there. I didn't realise life is simply progress and not perfection, but somehow I was striving for perfection, and when I got there I'd be okay. But in the meantime I wasn't okay. So that was part of my drinking scenario, drinking on heartbreak and goodness knows what else. I didn't really understand my feelings too well, as will emerge today. So what keeps me sober on a daily basis? It's an affiliation and being a part of something, being part of life generally, living life, and also a fellowship, that fellowship being AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is all about recovery for a day. What you see is what you get on any given day, and it will not fix you. Excuse me, I just dropped the AA preamble on the floor, but it hasn't been harmed, and nobody's been harmed in the process of it being dropped. So what is AA? I read the AA preamble, which is shared at every meeting, so you know what it is when you encounter it. You may encounter me in meetings, but I'm just one person amongst many. And this is important. I don't speak for AA, never can, never will. It doesn't have leaders, it doesn't have spokespersons. It has one primary purpose, which we'll hear about right now. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism, active alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. That's all we need, a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes causes. So that's the fellowship, but everybody inside is allied to something, somewhere, may belong to a denomination, may have political views, may belong to organisations and institutions, may wish to engage in controversy and endorse and oppose causes. So it doesn't stop you doing what you want to do. Fellowship is only there for one thing. Its primary purpose is to stay, or our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So AA is for one thing, sobriety, and I talk about it quite a lot, simply because sharing a message of experience, strength and hope about how it works for me, and then you can listen to other people and see how it works for them. And we have common ground, a desire to be sober and help other people, share our experience, strength and hope where we choose to. And some people remain within the fellowship and share everything there, and some people just share wherever they feel it's okay to share for them, not for the rest of people. Nobody wants to be turned to another person's point of view. So this is why fellowship works for me, because I'm not trying to convert anybody, because I don't have to anything or anything. And that's true. It's absolutely true. You remain as you are within fellowship, a free person to make choices, hopefully sober in the future. What on earth, so for today, January 25th, what on earth is emotional and spiritual? And all you need to do is work out what it means to you. So one fellowship, many faiths and beliefs and opinions. One fellowship with common ground, a multitude of beliefs and opinions, just as it will always be, because we are human beings with freedom of thought and choices. That is, when we're restored to sanity, we get our freedom of thought, feelings, emotions and choices. Doesn't mean they're always right. We just get them back, and then we keep on learning life. Gosh. So what was it like for me in the early days? Emotional and spiritual, exclamation mark. I heard these words a lot in my early days in the fellowship of AA. And upon becoming part of the fellowship, with no particular thought or feeling about emotional and spiritual matters, simply a desire to stop drinking for a while, and absolutely no intention of committing myself to a lifetime of sobriety. This is me in early days. After all, we would be mad to say never drink again, would we not? And that's because it was my best friend for all those years. Covered everything up, made everything possible. All I wanted to do when I got to AA was find relief from the world which either I had discarded or the world had discarded me as useless and surplus to requirements. I wanted to use my brain to understand the 12 steps, to understand the logic and why people kept on saying it was simple for complicated people like me. Using logic on an emotional and spiritual malady is likely to cause more madness. Logic is the second part of what happens in our brains. But we humans still think we can rule over everything. No one told me much about my feelings, my emotions, and the idea that my emotions were at the root of all this inability to stop drinking just made me even more mad. So, not really much a clue about emotional and spiritual matters. Me. I thought I controlled my emotions really well, and my emotions never got in the way of getting the job done. A bit of a nitwit in this respect, this is me. I never realised how my feelings impacted on everything, how my mood altered my thinking and my actions every single day, because they're automatic. Emotional and spiritual, I thought it got in the way of my recovery, because if I understood the 12 steps, that was going to be enough. It wasn't. I thought that emotional and spiritual was something for those who believed in God, was something to do with mystical notions and nothing to do with me. And I failed to understand most of what was going on in my head was about my feelings, which I ignored at all costs because they were too painful to deal with. I had not dealt with heartbreak. I had not dealt with love, the love I felt for women in my life. I had not dealt with my inability to cope with reality when people died and were close to me. Drink was my saviour when it came to feelings. I felt it helped me understand love in a logical way. I felt alcohol took away the sting and the pain, as well as made possible joy and happiness. I thought I was controlling my feelings, and that drink was always the best solution. I never realised how deluded I was, because everyone around me seemed to be doing the same thing, and I could not understand people who did not drink as much as people like me. Either they avoided me, which is much to my cost, I realise, or I avoided them because the way they behaved did not need alcohol to be happy or sad. They just had feelings they dealt with as they happened in the moment. And that is what emotional, spiritual life is all about. For me, this is feelings fitting reality, feelings happening in the moment of now, and being able to cope with them even when they feel very uncomfortable. And then feelings don't feel uncomfortable, they inform me of what's going on. My emotional state, my mood, will impact on my thinking and my actions. Now, how did I miss that? I just thought I could think my way through these things and I'd be alright, and then go down the pub. Well, it didn't work out quite like that, did it? If you have ever walked away from a situation and suddenly found that you have not said what you meant to say, most likely you were suppressing your true feelings, or not even experiencing the possibility of some true feelings. And an example from having a discussion with a beautiful girl, this is back in my teens, who says that she's doing nothing tonight, and what are you doing? And I say, and me simply saying, neither am I, it looks like a bleak night. Not realising she was inviting me out for the night, just to I don't know, I will never know. It could have been the greatest romance of my life. She was certainly a beautiful, gorgeous person inside and out, and I misunderstood, because I couldn't imagine that she'd be interested in me. That's where I'd come from. Yep. It took me a long time to realise I was a shy person and I did not pick up on the invitation. And the invitation happened more than once, and then when it was impossible, that's when I grieved, because I didn't realise until later how these things worked. I'm in a bit of a slow starter here. Anyway, there we go. All walking away from saying it, this is it, yes. It took me a long time to realise why I was a shy person and did not pick up on the invitation. Or walking away from saying yes to something and then realising I don't want to do that, having agreed to do it for a quiet life. And simply wondering why had I agreed to do it, because I felt ill at ease. It was not until I walked away and let the feelings come out that my thinking and subsequent anger at myself just gnawed away at my soul without respite. I had no forgiveness for myself, and I would not go back and say no or yes. I would just grit my teeth and get on with it, whatever it was. Always my fault, taking responsibility for things which were not my fault. But my fault in it was the inability to say yes to the right things and no to the wrong things, or feel the fear and nervousness of saying, why don't we do something? Anyway, the first 90 days in my recovery, the first 90 days when I stayed within the fellowship, I started to realise I had a lot of unresolved feelings inside me, which had been suppressed for many a year by alcohol, or stimulated by alcohol, so I could feel something back in the day. My feelings erupted in all sorts of ways without a drink. I felt angry and rage at myself for the way people had treated me, for the way I thought I allowed people to treat me. And these feelings felt so strongly, I felt I had the power to walk through walls with this strength of feeling. You know, people say move mountains. Well, you know, when those strengths of feelings come up, and the adrenaline is up, goodness knows what could have happened. All these feelings felt so strongly. And happy one moment, angry the next moment, almost in tears as each emotion tumbled out of me and around me. A seething fog of unimaginable pain. No longer suppressed, the feelings and the outrage kept me stuck, going round and round in circles. I did not know that I was grieving for everything that had gone wrong in my life, trying to grieve a lifetime in the moment of now, which is completely impossible. Overwhelmed. Yeah. I didn't realise I was grieving for everything that had gone wrong in my life, trying to grieve a lifetime in the moment of now. No wonder I was thirsty. I felt I wanted oblivion from this pain, and had a strong desire at the same time to overcome and conquer my killer malady. The trouble was, to take away the pain logically would lead back to drinking again and killing myself. What might have been a quick or slow way. I will never know. Well, at least I hope I'll never know. This is quite a long time ago. And it was a horribly uncomfortable time, coming to terms with the fact that I had a lot of loss which had been suppressed. I had a lot of joy which I never experienced properly because of alcohol. And in the rare days when I didn't drink, and feeling that serenity and peacefulness with partners in my life was just unimaginably blissful. But then of course you try and manufacture it, and life ain't like that. We have to work at bliss as much as we have to work at all the other stuff. Sometimes bliss is the outcome. As the days went by, the physical shakes and nervous tics started to go away, and I just felt I was just left with a head full of feelings which were driving me mad, constantly feeling like I was being jabbed and beaten up. Now I really started to understand what emotions were, and just how extreme they could be when they were not suppressed. I suddenly realised I was capable of every extreme feeling known to mankind, and the desire to act on these feelings was immensely strong. Which means that anyone is capable of anything in the moment if they hadn't learned how to cope. I was no different to anyone else on the planet when feelings have been suppressed for a long time, and suddenly there is a space to express them. They will all come out at once, and trying to sort them out with my thinking and logic was impossible. I was simply overloaded emotionally. I was overloaded, and I could not cope from moment to moment without wanting that drink to shut my head up and the racket inside. Now that's why I was going to meetings. Yes, at last, to let the racket go on and on and on as long as it needed to realise I was emotionally ill, and I needed help to cope moment to moment, minute to minute, hour to hour, and just for a day. So there is no safe place when your head's full of rage, and my only logical way of dealing with it in the past was to seek oblivion from the horror that had gone on and my part in it. Horror, real true horror, which is terrible. And why so many people go back down the pub, so you don't have to deal with it. Yeah. I had not coped with my emotions in any moment of now. That's a question mark. A rude awakening those first 90 days. There was no finishing line at the end of the 90 days. Simply a prospect of better days, and I started to realise coping with those feelings during those 90 days had not been done by me or myself on my own. I'd endured the awkward company of many people during a happy time, awkward company of many people having a happy time whilst I felt rage, anger and misery, and times of mad humour and comedy at myself, and the antics that was shared as experience, strength and hope. The mad reality of times past and the reality of now was being shared at every meeting. Whether it was good, bad or ugly, I started to hear the truth that some people shared, the tall stories that people shared, the funny stories people shared, and the horrific and tragic that people shared. I was beginning to realise what it was like to be a human being, dealing with emotional and spiritual living on a daily basis. And if you're full of crap for many years like I was, those first 90 days were a real roller coaster, and it seemed like it would never stop. And I'd always had insomnia without drinking, and believe you me, exhaustion. I'm grateful I was reminded that there is a reading in one of the books, as Bill sees it, that we are one fellowship with common ground and primary purpose, and everyone in fellowship has their own belief system and opinions. In the early 90 days, I was hoping for divine intervention which would lead me to believing in God, and then salvation, I guess. I suppose I was already aware that the miracle of sobriety was indeed a miracle, and yet I could not connect it to a deity selecting me or anybody else to be on an emotional spiritual path. And then it dawned on me after all these years that everything is driven on the emotional and spiritual path of life, experiencing feelings in the moment of now, coping with them, and if we cannot cope, ask for help. And then somebody said God works through people, and I'd heard Gandhi say that God is truth and love. So God works through people. Wisdom, truth, love and wisdom are learned, and we can't understand something, and when we can't understand something we can ask for help. And that cracked it for me. I was not omnipotent, never thought I was, but I'd forgotten how to ask for help. So the notion of prayer meditation was a good idea, sorting out what I could do and what I could not do. So when I couldn't do something, it was okay to feel the awkwardness and ask for help. Thank good, or God, or whatever you believe in, for that. Because it's perfectly okay. What you believe in is what you believe in. It's good that you have those beliefs. And it's not for me to upset them in any way, but please respect the fact that I'm learning. I'm not a doubter, I'm just learning. I'm just a learner, not a doubter. Don't forget, in my early days, as my feelings erupted all over the place, I needed a safe place to be, And being destitute at the time, if I had not bumped into an old friend in the street, I asked him for help, but he said he couldn't help me, and I ought to go to AA, or I would be dead. Because he wouldn't help me, even though he was a professor of psychiatry, which he is, he was just down the road from where I live still. I haven't seen him very much over the years, except at funerals. Or rather, he realised he simply couldn't help me, is what I realise today. Forgiving myself for asking for help, forgiving him for not having the help to give me. Even the most eminent of scientists have not been able to provide a logical clinical process back to sanity. Ha! A fix which can be administered with a guarantee. There is none. No wonder the fellowship of AA was always said, attraction not promotion. How they got to this so quickly is beyond me, and only now do I recognise just how many alcoholics got to recovery and realise there is no fix to be promoted when it comes to addiction. In fellowship, what you see is what you get on any given day. Always good, always bad, and always with some ugly bits thrown in. Because that is life. Good, bad and ugly. So, the medical profession, they can understand how people fall into addiction. However, medical people cannot stop life happening, and all the consequences for anyone, anywhere, when it comes to addiction or disease or anything else. Some medical conditions can be fixed because science has found a way. Science has not found a way to medicate humans out of their life experiences. And it is life experience, the emotional spiritual condition we have, that fellowship helps people deal with and cope with on a daily basis. Sharing experience, strength and hope leads to learning the truth, what it is to love people, what it is to be loved back, unconditionally, and the wisdom of life keeps on happening. Good, bad and ugly. I suppose, excuse me, mankind's most difficult task to live in the moment of now. That's what it is, to live in the moment of now, cope with it, or not cope and ask for help. Carry on evolving and learning life, being involved in family where we can, community where we can, society, arts and sciences, enterprise, and dealing and coping with the good, the bad and the ugly of everything we may encounter day by day. We make progress, we have imagination, we see the next step, we make intuitive leaps, sometimes into fantasy, sometimes into a new reality. Very cool, one day at a time. And that's what's good for me. It is very cool, one day at a time. There is no fix to life. It keeps on happening, and we can be restored to sanity even if we have periods of madness. And the periods of madness can happen without drink, because we get madly enraged by life. But, you know, life is not always enraging. And there's funny bits and sad bits. It's what it is. It's the stuff of living in the moment of now. Feeling the emotions of now. Coping or not coping. Learning how to ask for help. So, if you're stuck in the malady, there is a way out. Gradually, horribly, ugly, and it's worth it, because once you get to the other side of however long it takes to get away from the physical, emotional cravings, and life is happening, where the madness doesn't suggest go back and obliterate yourself, or seek oblivion. Dealing with it in the moment of now, so you don't walk away from things and think, I wish I'd said something back then. Actually, you might actually have to go back and walk back and say, I realise I don't feel right about this, I haven't expressed my true opinion. And then, what? Yeah, it happens, even in recovery. I miss so much, because I just miss it. My senses don't always work as I would wish them to. Yeah, so just for today, can do, can't do, wisdom to know the difference. The serenity prayer can be helpful anytime. God, or to good, to get back to sanity, being restored to sanity so serenity can happen even in difficult times. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, moment to moment, minute to minute, hour to hour, day by day, rather just for today.